Our depot was constructed in the early 1880s. It handled both freight and passengers. The waiting rooms were on both sides, one for the gentlemen and one for the ladies and the children, because the gentlemen sometimes got a little crude and the ladies didn't want the children exposed to that. I used to sell the tickets through the windows here. This was my cash drawer where I kept my monies from doing that. As a station master here, I was a very pivotal person in the early community because Grand River did not exist as a highway. It was just a dirt trail. Everything that came and went through the train depot here. They shipped milk out of here. This was a great dairy area here. Holstein cattle. They did timbering here, and the lumber got shipped out of here. And the commodities that the people in the village ordered were shipped in by train. The station master, of course, also had to deal with the actual trains themselves as to getting them to stop, pick up mail. All the mail went in and out through here. So again, I would say he was very pivotal in what was going on in the community. He usually got the word before anybody else about what was happening outside of the village. The next step in communication was the telegraph. The station master had to be a telegrapher, and this was his instrument to contact the other stations that were on the wire, Fowlerville, Brighton, and he could also send messages out to Detroit or other places if they were necessary. They used what they called the Morse code, which was a series of dots and dashes. Each letter and each number, 1 through 10, had its own code. And these guys became very proficient at knocking this stuff out and could do it rapidly. Of course, by having the telegraph, the word got to him first. He would pass it out to the community. This was a social gathering place here. I mean, people came here to get the word, to get their mail. Newspapers that were printed in Detroit would be dropped off by the trains. He also had to let the engineers on those railroad engines when to stop, when to keep going. And that was done with this series of levers here, which were connected to arms that are located, would have been located on the top of this pole outside the window here. And the arms would stick up like this, and the way he had them arranged would be a message to the engineer that he needed to stop, he could keep going, or he had mail to pick up. The last passengers were picked up in the early 1950s. The last functions that were done by the railroad were freight. There was a freight shed west of this building, and at one point the shed caught fire and burnt down, and they did no more freight after that. The Ann Arbor Railroad eventually just stored items in this building, and then they eventually just left it. There's been a lot of work done here, and it is a work in progress still. Recently, we added the caboose on the west side of the building. That's a work in progress. The guys are working on that. They still have to do some interior work on it and some exterior finishings. And that'll be done, and then we'll be able to have people who can go through and look at what a caboose is on the inside, because they don't pull them on trains anymore. Communications with the railroad. When the tug came in, along the rails, all the way along the rails, were telephone poles with arms on the top and wires strung. And that's how the telegraphy worked. I could send a message over to Fowlerville, tell him, if the train stops there, he's got to stop here to pick up this. And they acknowledge it he would get the message. But we had no other communication with the engineers on those trains outside of some kind of a hand signal, a light, or the semaphores, because they had no radios in the cabs at that time. Recently, we received a gift from the Ann Arbor Railroad of a large locomotive bell. The youngsters that come in here, they love to ring the bell. So when the young people come in, I tell them, can you do a finger like that? And when they do that, then I slip a knuckle over there. And I tell them, now close up your hand. And then they come over and ring the bell. The youngsters, I mean, 4, 5, 6 years old. During the school year, we get second graders in here, and they come in, and I let them use the telegraph key and ring the bell, and they ask questions about how everything works here. Brings back a memory of one of your grandparents or your parents when they were young. They probably told you stories about things they did and used when they were young people, so you might find a sample of it in